Hello and good rising. I'm Professor Oliver, and today I have some homework questions for you. First up, can any organization formed in bias truly become inclusive? Can any organization formed in bias truly become inclusive? Now, this is a two-parted question. One is, can it rapidly become inclusive, is the first part. And the second part is, can it become inclusive without first tearing it down? My examination of organizations over the past year who have said that they wanted to be inclusive have shown to me that they are inherently biased by design from their origin, that build on top of the original biases of the original founders and people who put together their bylaws and their organization charts and their requirements and their merits and their standards and their bare minimums. I've seen nothing but interwoven layers of bias that have helped to control the direction and the people, the target audience that these organizations attract. And so when they get to the table and say, well, how do we make change? The first and most private conversation is, we do not want to destroy the organization that we've built. We don't want to change it. We don't want it to look different. So how about we just say people are welcome? And they don't take a look at their systems to ensure that what has been interwoven, like the very thread that they've used to build the fabric of the organization, is in fact the thread of systemic racism, systemic gender bias, and systemic prejudices which the original founders held to begin with. I pose this question to you. Can an organization built in bias truly become inclusive? My next question for you today is, can any person in power or in leadership within an organization built in bias truly take action or think inclusively? Can a person in power or in leadership truly think or take action towards inclusivity? My experience with this question comes from being in community with leaders who don't want to think of themselves as racist, don't want to think of themselves as exclusive in any way, shape, or form. They want to do things that create a very defined line, a very defined border between them and who has access to them and everybody else. And so they don't see that as being exclusive. They see that as being choosy, having merit. The famous word, having standards by which you can become one of us and participate with us, by which you cannot. And if you can't meet the threshold, sorry, you can't play. And because these standards are held so tightly, a point of pride for those in power, for those in leadership, it is a main talking point. It is a main decision-making point for them and their entire organization. And so I asked you this question: can a person in power, in leadership, truly think and take action toward inclusivity when such actions and thoughts go against the very standards by which they've set on who can be included and who cannot? I want to add this point to the question of leadership being inclusive. For months, post-diversity focused desires, without a plan, I have listened to women complain, fight, and defend their lived experiences, which are rooted in systemic racism, informing them that I lack capability. Here's the second part of this case study, which helps me formulate the question: can leadership truly think, and take action towards inclusivity. For months, post diversity desires without a plan. So it's not even their plan, it's just their desire, statements made by many organizations. Post their diversity-focused desire without a plan. I have listened to women complain, fight, and defend their lived experiences. And this is women in leadership. And these stances that they've defend, their lived experiences that they're defending, they're rooted in systemic racism informing them that I lack capability. And so I asked this question, can they even think inclusively? Because while on one hand they desire to have a focus of diversity, they don't have a plan, and they don't think that I or anyone else of color has the capability, the expertise, the knowledge, or the wherewithal, the creative processing or the creative problem solving to even help them. Because from many case studies, from many women of color who have tried, the response has been, we spoke to someone more capable. We spoke to someone with more merits. We spoke to someone who's already written a book and gotten published. Like there isn't any systemic bias or racism in the publishing industry. I mean, there's one publisher that last year put out a call for Black writers, for Black voices, not for people of color, just for Black, that they would examine their manuscript, which had to be completed, not even like a treatment. It had to be completed for them to examine it, to then make a suggestion on publishers. Not even that they would take them on. So what they are looking for and who they will take advice from and who they would speak to, that's already being informed again by this thread of bias that has built the organization. So without therapy, without bias rehab, without introspection, can leaders, people in power, truly think inclusively? For a long time, I've heard the excuse of, well, so-and-so's a good person. Yeah, well, they're a good person. Oh, I know them. They're a good person. No, you'd never do that. It's a good person. I don't think she could do that. She's a good person. The good person excuse comes from a long string of cognitive dissonance. Not wanting to deal with the problem at hand, not wanting to deal with facts presented. It has to be proven to them that a person is bad or can be bad because a person's actions, a person's life is neither good nor bad. We are all made of dualities. No one within themselves is a monolith. We can all make choices left or right, good or bad, evil or holy. That doesn't make us one thing or the other. We are all things. We are human beings. We are living out an experiment trying to get better. However, the good person excuse is placed on non-people of color by default and is lived and is held up and is supported. Here's my question for you related to the good person excuse or answer. The famous response, but she's a good person. Why is it that if a good person commits a bad deed, there's no blame placed on them? But if a person of color is blamed or accused or harassed or ultimately punished for a deed they didn't commit, but they are put down by a good person, why is that okay? Why does that continue to be the answer, but they're a good person? Was the person of color not a good person also? Or are they by default a bad person because of the color of their skin, the kink of their hair, the accent in their voice, or the smell of their food? I say this to you in closing. If out of the gate of diversity, equity, and inclusion claims, people of color are blocked, then it is proof that the hearts and minds of the people in power are not ready for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because people of color continue to be blocked and silenced when it comes to DE&I work, it is proven that the people in power, their hearts and minds are not ready for diversity, equity, inclusion. And therefore, these good people who are acting in self-defense and their ego should step down from their positions of power to allow new leadership to come in and make the necessary changes so that the desire of the direction for diversity, equity, inclusion can truly be achieved. I look forward to getting your answers. I look forward to seeing you doing your homework, because now is the time of accountability. We can no longer just have opinions. We can no longer just have feelings. What is the case? What is truly going on? And I challenge you to answer these questions.